Hi, and welcome to the Bruce Channel. I'm Bruce. I've been busy, and there are more topics, more events than ever before, I think, and I can't possibly get to all of those, even those that are very worthy. So once again, I'll have to decide what to keep and what to trim back, and I do know this. The musical chairs, the music ends, and again, it's the Yellow Jacket story that couldn't find a chair. All right, so I'll begin with this first because I can get in and out quickly. If I were to tell you I know my way around the kitchen pretty well, you might infer I'm a good cook, but I can say that without lying, but it's not that I'm a good cook, it's that the kitchen isn't that big, and I usually know where the ladle is, or the grater, or the blender. So yeah, I know my way around the kitchen. But there are only a few things that I make that take any skill. Now, here's the thing. If I need a cup of this, or a pint of that, or so many ounces, I always have to go look it up. Google a cup or a pint or whatever. Maybe you're one of those too. If you are, Google One Good Thing by Jillee. Jillee. You can download this, print it out, hang it somewhere, maybe on the fridge. See, the C's, the little C's, are cups. It takes two of them to make a pint. It takes 2 P's, pints to make a quart. It takes 4 quarts to make a G. Yeah, I love it. On mine, I penciled in a little addition. 8 ounces is a cup. So now you know, and you're welcome. All right, so Mike Larson's frequently kicked down the road Bloody Wednesday came and went without much notice. Now, he practically guaranteed disaster in January with the Fed's meeting, and they meet quarterly. So then he kicked it to April, and then to June, and then to September. Well, again, there was no collapse. So when I first talked about it, I'd said I'd read a book once. Actually, I've read lots of books, but the one that I was alluding to I couldn't find at the time, Crisis Investing by Douglas R. Casey, made virtually the same predictions. At the end of our economy, the country's going down the tubes. It's imminent. The original copyright on this book, 1979. Now, Mr. Larson's prediction may one day come about. He may be correct. But the fact is, doom and gloom is here. I've got the answers. That is a proven successful product. And it doesn't matter if it's magical nutritional supplement drinks or various religious teachings, or your money is going away unless you pay me to tell you how to save it. I must tell you this. Mike Larson's colleague, Larry Edelson, he's been on a trampoline, so a little over a month ago, he held an emergency meeting at the offices in Florida. He lives in Thailand. He flew in special because the war cycles that he's been studying, this is all coming to a head. Disaster any day, maybe by October. And the markets were going to go bluey. Well, last January, he told us that the stock market, the Dow, would hit 32,000 by this coming January. Well, now he's back optimistic. This week he wrote me to tell me that the Dow will hit 31,000. He hedges it, stretches a little bit over the next 2 years. And then take a look at this. Customary bragging. What? Have I lost my mind? Neither. I'm simply one of the very few analysts who understands the forces that are building to send the Dow skyrocketing higher. I'm the one. I'm one of the very few in the world. Pay me, I'll give you the answers. So the Pope is in town. The Pope is actually in the country, and it's a big deal. Popes do visit the States, but this may be this Pope's only visit. And he spoke to Congress. That was Thursday morning, and he was received politely by all, but the Republicans, many of them, not all, many of them, don't like it when he speaks against greed, which he has done many times in many places, not just in front of Congress. Interesting, there was a Catholic congressman, I think from Arizona, and he boycotted because he doesn't, whatever. Okay, so that was Thursday morning. On Wednesday evening, he was the guest of honor at the White House, and wow. A friend of mine whose job in D.C. has her meeting lots of members of Congress routinely, and folks at the White House too. She and her husband were invited guests. Now, I'm not Catholic, but that's a big deal. That's a something. So the The Pope speaks to Congress on Thursday. House Speaker John Boehner figured he couldn't top that. He is Catholic. Literally, on Friday morning, he announced he's resigning from Congress. Not just the Speaker's job, from Congress, period, at the end of October. Now, it said there's a lot of reasons for that. He'd actually planned originally to retire at the end of last year, it said, but then he didn't because the majority leader, Eric Cantor, was unexpectedly defeated. But it's also true that there's another budget battle coming up, and there's been threats to shut down the government again. And his Tea Party faction doesn't like it when he negotiates. They're all or nothing. So there's been speculation that if he again tried to negotiate, they were going to oust him from the speakership. So it would be true. This time he doesn't have to worry about that. He can make his negotiation and then not worry about them coming after him with the long knives. But if you like political theater as drama, it's going to be a feeding frenzy, because now the various factions and individuals are going to, who gets to be the speaker? Now, it's true that the current majority leader, Kevin McCarthy, may have the inside track, but it'll be interesting to watch. House of Cards coming to life.
Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. Or wait, I can let others do it.
So all of that politicking is fascinating to watch, and the Pope's visit is worthy of the headlines it's receiving. But truly, the biggest news since our last show, Volkswagen. It's unbelievable. So they put in secret software that made the emissions equipment only work when it was being tested. And that is incredible. That's not a cost-cutting measure that, results in gas tanks exploding and catching fire, or tires that had blowouts at high speed, or SUVs that roll over, or cars that suddenly accelerated. Those were all bad. But it wasn't a conscious effort to bamboozle. That's a great word. It was skullduggery, deliberate. So they're going to have to recall like 11 million cars. Fixing that will take billions of dollars. They're going to have to pay billions in fines. That's just here. Other countries also have emissions laws. It's really only the beginning. How can they run a commercial that says, "We're great"? Oh, they're probably going to have to run something, maybe an apology, maybe this weekend. But really, what are they going to say? The CEO resigned. That was the start. They can then say, well, but it was probably an engineer who came up with it. Not because I'm down on engineers, but they're the ones who seek to make things better. They're supposed to be thinking of ways to make the car's performance better. But in the meeting it was given voice to, nobody thought it through. The implications are staggering. So their stock has tanked. It's what, maybe 50% of what it was? Which might make it a good investment if they can recover. But only if they succeed at that. And can they build back a trust? The economic fallout is impossible to predict. It's not going to be pretty. And the people who own these cars, they haven't even announced how they're going to fix it. Oh, and if you don't know this, the software shuts down the emissions because that makes the engine perform better, faster, more torque. So if I test rode the car and then bought it, and it's recalled and they fix it, now it's different. It doesn't have the performance that I signed on for, that I wanted. Don't I have a case to argue for a full refund? And I'm not a lawyer either, but if there is a case, if you can make that argument, wow, so assuming they survive the billions to repair and then the billions in fines, you've got to give everybody their money back. I don't know. And even if they offered a terrific trade on a different car. Would you ever want to own a Volkswagen again? And they're the biggest car manufacturer in the world. That's going to change. They are a huge economic force in Germany, but they've got factories all over the world. 2 in the States that I know of and a huge one in Mexico. So how'd you like to be a VW salesman right now? You think there's anyone coming in the showrooms? How are you going to get your commission? How are you going to pay your rent? And this was only on a particular diesel engine, but it's the trust. You know, is the public going to want to buy anything? I wouldn't buy anything from these sons of bitches. I bet you some people think, even if it isn't one of the diesels. If no one buys the cars, and no one's going to buy the stock if no one's buying the cars, what happens to the auto workers all over the world? I've said I'm not an economist, and my finances have shown that to be true many times, but this could unleash a huge global downturn. It's got nothing to do with Mr. Larson's Bloody Wednesday forecasts. It's possible the company doesn't even survive. I mean, maybe factories and maybe nameplates. Maybe Volkswagen as a brand is bought by General Motors or something. Who knows? And then there are implications that have nothing to do with that, but you know, Germany has been the strongest economy in Europe. One writer in Berlin wrote, for the first time in recent memory, Germany isn't the solution, it's the problem. They're the ones with the deep pockets that have been able to do things, lend money to the Italians and the Greeks and Irish. Not going to be good. There is good news to be found. Almost 30 years ago, Proposition 65 in California mandated that the state publish the names of chemicals that cause cancer or birth defects or other reproductive harm. Guess what just made their list? Glyphosate, the ingredient in Roundup and other herbicides invented by Monsanto, and that is very good news. You know, sooner or later, it's going to go away. Sooner or later. I'm not betting on sooner. But years hence, generations yet unborn will look at our current events and say, what were they thinking? Although I submit to you it's more like not thinking. By the way, if you have not seen it, there's a really striking mini documentary produced by Neil Young. Yeah, that Neil. Go to YouTube and look for Seeding Fear. Or just Google Seeding Fear. It's only about 10 minutes. But if you watch it, after you watch it, you'll see that Monsanto's arrogance is about more than just glyphosate. So, did you watch the debates? I'm not going to delve super deep, and you either watched it or not, but just some thoughts. I'm pretty sure that's the last time there'll be 2 debates because former Governor Rick Perry had already dropped out, and earlier this week, Wisconsin's Governor Scott Walker dropped out, and I've got friends in Wisconsin who have mixed feelings. They didn't want him to be president, but they don't want him to be governor either. Anyway, and then there are those others that who, you know, for whatever reason, they're just unable to make much traction. There's talk that George Pataki from New York and Louisiana's Bobby Jindal won't be around for the next time. And Lindsey Graham's a happy guy, and I thought he did well in the first debate, but you know, he's not making, even in his home state, he's not picking up a lot of ground. Not picking up any ground. By the way, that next debate is October 30th. That's John Boehner's last day. All right. There's also talk that Rand Paul won't be in it then either. And partly, if that's true, because his Senate seat is also up in 2016, he'd have to run. I think it would be a shame if he drops out. I don't know if I'd ultimately vote for him or not, but his arguments are clear. They are reasoned. He doesn't shout, and he didn't ignore the time limits. You know, that can happen sometimes, but some of those guys, some of those candidates, let's put it that way, not gender specific, some of those candidates were boorish in the way they ignored their time constraints. Time's up, but they kept talking another 30 seconds. Back to Rand Paul. I liked his dad's foreign policy. We have over 800 military bases throughout the rest of the world. And I liked it when he was asked about boots on the ground in Iraq.
The idea of the boots on the ground need to be Arab boots. If you want boots on the ground and you want them to be our sons and daughters, you got 14 other choices. There will always be a Bush or Clinton for you if you want to go back to war in Iraq. But the thing is, the first war was a mistake, And I'm not sending our sons and our daughters back to Iraq.
He also spoke pretty compassionately about the possible use of medical marijuana. So in a very crowded room, he stood apart. He offers a very clear difference, which, to be fair, so does Donald Trump. But of those two, only one has manners. And Carly Fiorina clearly knows what every other female candidate running for high office has known, and that is they've got to show strength. Well, if I were her coach, I'd suggest she dial that back just a little bit. She certainly can deliver a line, but I think her candidacy is doomed. I think she's a bit disingenuous about her time at Hewlett-Packard, but that's what people do. They put on absolutely the best posture and speak of the upside. That's what you do when you're running for office. But then there's this. According to the Bloomberg News, during her time at HP, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of products were sold to Iran through a foreign subsidiary of their own. And that was against U.S. export sanctions, which forbid such sales. HP was the leading tech company in Tehran. That's what everybody had. So that stuff was getting in somehow. Maybe there's a good explanation. So a week and a half ago, Fox News' Chris Wallace asked her about the foreign-owned company that had been named Wholesaler of the Year in 2003 by Hewlett-Packard. She answered, "The Wholesaler of the Year that you're describing was doing business with another company that was doing business with Iran. Clearly, that was not honest in their dealings with us, and they were not honest in their dealings with this third company." Okay, that is straightforward enough and plausible. But then several days ago, but subsequent to that answer, she was asked about it again, this time by a radio host in Iowa. And this time she answered, "Well, that was after my time, so I actually am not aware of that. I mean, apparently they were named that, but I don't know that. You know, it was after my time, so I can't speak to that." All right. That's, I think, clearly more than disingenuous. How do you not know about something you discussed with understanding and clarity just about a week previously? Oh, and Wholesaler of the Year in 2003, she was the CEO from 1999 to 2005. When that gets more widely known, I don't think she can recover from that. When it gets to the actual primary season in January and beyond, every place they go, Iowa and then New Hampshire and after that South Carolina, everywhere they go, her opponents are going to run the two seemingly opposing statements. They're going to run that on television ads and radio ads over and over and over. You know, we the people, the voters, we always complain, regardless of which party we support or whom we vote for, we always complain that the politicians tell us they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and then it doesn't happen. Well, not that nothing happens, but when they promise these things, they're not lying. They are offering what they genuinely believe to be the best possible case, the best outcome, what wonderful things would happen if everything falls into place just perfectly. Of course, that never happens. And besides, we want to hope. We want to dream. We want to be uplifted. No one's going to vote for a candidate who promises doom and gloom. We would pay doom and gloomers for ways to avoid doom and gloom, but when it comes to voting, we want the soaring rhetoric. We won't vote for someone who honestly tells us, you know, we need to raise taxes if we're going to fix the infrastructure before it starts getting even more dangerous. Anyone recall the Minneapolis bridge failure several years ago? What was it, 2008, 2007? Interstate? Big bridge, high-end? Yeah, that's infrastructure. Walter Mondale tried. He ran against Ronald Reagan, and he said during their debate, taxes have to go up. The difference is, I'll tell you that, and he won't. Mondale lost that election. the electoral college vote, unbelievable, 525 to 13. And in Ronald Reagan's second term, taxes went up in 1985 and 1986 and 1987. I also think that Dr. Ben Carson, has doomed his campaign. He did well in the debate. As before, he was soft-spoken, he was polite. I love this. He didn't claim to have all of the answers, and that is refreshing. But then on Meet the Press, he said it would be okay for a Muslim to be in Congress, but not okay to be a president. Huh? Now, since then, his defense of that is that he refuses to be politically correct. Just to be politically correct, fine, but there is no religious litmus test to hold office, any office. John Kennedy in 1960 said, "No one asked my religion when I served in the South Pacific, or my brother's religion before his plane exploded over the English Channel." So while Dr. Carson is still polling well, I believe there's no escaping what he said, because any opponent, once we get to voting season, will run that over and over and over. There were some good lines, some really good ones. My pick for the best line of the night, I know there were some good ones, but my favorite of the night was this riff by Jeb Bush.
Please. So 40 years ago, I smoked marijuana, and I admit it. I'm sure that other people might have done it and may not want to say it in front of 25 million people. My mom's not happy that I just did. That's true.
That was almost as good as this one from 8 years ago.
Words have in the past gotten you in trouble, words that were borrowed and words that some found hateful. An editorial in the Los Angeles Times said, in addition to his uncontrolled verbosity, Biden is a gaffe machine. Can you reassure voters in this country that you would have the discipline you would need on the world stage, Senator?
Yes.
Thank you, Senator Biden.
So the vice president still has not decided, if he has decided, he hasn't announced it, whether or not he'll run. Deadline is approaching. It's in November sometimes, and I've changed my mind a little bit. I wasn't certain he would not run, but I thought he would not. I'm not certain he will, but now I think he will. I'm 55-45, say. He is a good campaigner, but Hillary was always so strong in the polls, but she's looking vulnerable. Bernie Sanders is ahead of her in some polls, in some states, and his appearances are lights out. He, like Donald Trump, lights the crowd, and the reason is because they don't poly-speak. They speak authentically, and voters like that. So we're also told that the FBI may be able to recover some of those emails from Hillary's server the servers were wiped. That's supposed to destroy it, but there's some pretty sophisticated stuff. And if they do recover it, that could be very good for her, because it could put to rest all the accusations that she lied. But if she isn't telling the truth and they're recovered, we lost a couple more gentle souls this week, although they were pretty much opposites in every way. They were both gentle. Jack Larson forever found it hard to do much acting later on, because in the early days of television, he played Jimmy Olsen in The Adventures of Superman. And because of that, he migrated to writing books and plays, producing and directing. Only rarely did he appear on a stage or in front of a camera. He was 87. And then another gentle soul, not at all well educated. I don't know if he ever went to a play in his life. But instead of engaging endeavors of the arts and intellect, instead he played the toughest position in what was then a much tougher sport than it is now, and that's baseball. Longtime catcher for the New York Yankees, Yogi Berra, died this week at the age of 90. He played in more World Series games than anyone else ever. He was the American League MVP 3 times, and he was smart. He was uneducated, but he was smart. And he gave us some of the best malaprops ever. You know some of them, of course. It's deja vu all over again. And it ain't over till it's over. My favorite. He was on the phone giving someone directions to his house. And he said, so when you come to the fork in the road, take it. I spoke recently about being nice, and despite his being a superstar, he was friends with everybody, unfailingly nice. And of course his name, Yogi Berra, he wasn't named Yogi, he was named Lawrence. Yogi Berra spawned the Hanna-Barbera character, Yogi Bear. Hey, what's up, boo-boo? Smarter than the average bear. Finally this, one of the rarest birds in the world, known of, but never before photographed, has now been. Lives deep in the jungles of only a few islands in the Pacific. It is called the mustached kingfisher. Like other kingfishers, it makes that standard jungle sound, coo, 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 coo. And it is gorgeous, isn't it? Isn't it a cutie? All right, so one of these days we'll do something musical again. But today, I'm done. But I do hope your upcoming week is the best one you've ever had.